Dear friends, Namaste. On behalf of Indian Embassy, I, Deepak Bansal, Second Secretary, welcome and thank all the participants and experts from Switzerland and India who are attending this important webinar on life sciences and biotech sectors in the Indian state of Telangana. This webinar would help the Swiss companies to understand the various industrial policies and landscape in the Indian state of Telangana in the sector of life sciences and biotech. For this webinar today, we have a very senior officer from Industries and Commerce Department of Government of Telangana, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. We have speakers from Invest India, Invest Telangana, our knowledge partner T&A Consulting, and last but not the least, from Novartis India. Before we commence the webinar, let me introduce the MISSP program, that is Make in India for Swiss SMEs. MISSP. This is a program by Embassy of India. This program acts as a facilitative platform for connecting the Swiss companies for India market entry services. It helps the Swiss companies to frame their India access strategy with the benefits of workshops, webinars, networking events, information exchange, and others. Currently, there are around 130 Swiss companies which are the members of our MISSP. Now, without any further delay, let me welcome you with the first speaker of the day. I invite Mr. Tarun Gupta from T&A Consulting to deliver his presentation. Mr. Gupta.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deepak, for this warm welcome and good afternoon to all our friends in India and in Switzerland. I dial in from the outskirts of New Delhi, from a lovely suburb of Gurgaon, and where we are in the midst of summer. So please allow me to pull up my presentation. But first, I would also like to introduce my senior colleague, Mr. Ashwin Merchant, who is dialed in from Mumbai. Good afternoon, Ashwin. And Ashwin is probably one of the most knowledgeable person you'll ever meet on India-Swiss corridor. With that, allow me, Ashwin, allow all our listeners for me to pull up my presentation. Here we go. Okay. So last 14 months have been challenging, and that would be an understatement for the world, and India is no exception. Last 2 months, even more so, have been challenging. As India emerges from the second wave of pandemic, I would first like to give a big shout out to all our friends in Switzerland for their wishes and support over the last few months. It has been a challenging time, and we are now coming out of it. However, as one wise person said, every challenge presents an opportunity. Current pandemic will result in new business partnerships, new business models. Can India be a preferred business partner to Switzerland? What has changed in India? What is changing in India? My aim over the next few minutes would be to provide a balanced view and not the Bollywood version. Today, we have an eminent panel of speakers. So you will be hearing a lot of data points, but I'm also familiar that in this age of pandemic, virtual meetings, we all have this death by webinar. So all of us will try and keep our presentations precise with some key messages. My presentation is broadly divided into two parts: the economic impact of pandemic and the India opportunity. With that, I move to the next slide. Has Indian economy been impacted by COVID? Yes, period. The answer is yes. Last financial year, which ended in March 2021, it's expected that our economy shrank by about 8%. And after that, April and May, we had the second wave. Fortunately, we seem to have gone past the peak, but estimates indicate that it may have an impact of 1 to 2% of our GDP. The economic impact slightly reduced in the second pandemic because we did not have a huge lockdown. We had a more local lockdown, and there were no restrictions on movement of goods. Specifically, now our expectation is, and I'll give some estimates of world bodies as well, that we foresee a V-shaped recovery primarily driven by strong fundamentals, a strong domestic demand, and expected growth in export of products and services. IMF estimate indicate that India should be back on the long-term trajectory of 7 to 8% growth from 2022 to 2025. Now, do we need this long-term growth of 8%? Answer is yes. As a country, we need to grow at 8 to 8.5% if we have to create 12 million jobs, non-farm payroll jobs every year. As a result, entire focus of all our policies, initiatives is to make sure that we are growing at this 8 to 8.5%. I would also like to draw your points on some of the key financial indicators. Foreign exchange reserves at their highest level. The PMI index, purchasing manager index, remains stable. The unemployment, which had shot up last year, has been now stable at about 6.5%, 7%. There is a small uptick in April because of the second wave. And some of the other indicators, some of the four leading indicators of economy are, number one, our goods and service tax collection. At their highest level, you see, even exceeding the pre-COVID levels. The e-way bills, which are required for transportation of goods, again, we are talking about over 70 million e-way bills. Power consumption, which is a fairly good indicator, is again it's above its average pre-COVID levels. The passenger vehicle registration, the personal mobility demand increased, so we saw an uptick. Although in the last 2 months, because of this local lockdown, there has been a slightly adverse impact, but overall, the trend for personal mobility remains. In fact, India was the only economy wherein we had a strong FII equity inflows in 2020. So as a result, our stock market capitalization at its highest level, even as a percentage to our GDP. So far, all good. But what about FDI in 2020, in financial year 2020? The UNCTAD report said that, I think it came out in January, that in 2020, the FDI globally decreased by about 40%. However, India was one of the shining stars, whereas for the financial year just ended, our FDI increased to about $80 odd billion, right? So what is it which is driving this FDI, this FII? What is that? And ladies and gentlemen, that is the key message on my slide of the acronym CFID. The long-term story, FDI is a long-term decision. And so the long-term India opportunity story remains intact. And why do I say that? So the acronym I want to leave today with you is CFID: consumption, formalization, infrastructure, digitization. And I will just have one slide on each of this, which in my view gives the biggest factor why India continues to will attract FDI. So first C is consumption. Okay, this we try to do some interesting data play. So what is that data play? India is the world's sixth largest consumer market. By 2030 is expected to be the third largest consumer market behind US and China. India is consumption-driven economy. Consumption accounts for nearly 60% of our GDP. That is a key fact to know. And this consumption, even in value terms, has grown. It has grown from about $450 billion in 2008 to about $1.5 trillion in 2018. And by 2030, the estimated it will grow again by 3x. Keep that number 3x. It's very important in the Indian context, 3x number. So consumption-driven economy. Now, everybody talks about, and the biggest driver for foreign investment into India is the size and growing domestic market. So what do I have this graph on the right? Okay. So graph on the left talks about India as the third largest consumer market. Then on the bottom left, we talk about the household pyramid. And on the right is the most interesting. Okay. What I call it is the DAN. What is the DAN? Disney, Amazon, Netflix consuming class. If you look at it, there are about 30 million unique households broadly put together, which are subscriber to these OTT. Okay. of which you can say about 15 odd million are Amazon Prime or online pharmacy subscribe, and 5 million are Netflix. This and extra and marry that with the pyramid on the left. So what we are seeing is there are 30 million households which are really driving this consumption, and they have income, annual household income of $15,000 plus, in purchasing power parity about $50,000, right? So out of 275 million households, these 30 million households are really the consuming class. And in the next 5 years, this DAN segment is expected to triple, 3x, 100 million households. So now a lot of companies are coming towards India to cater to this consuming class. Third largest consumer market, the consuming class expected to triple. So this brings me to the second part of my acronym, formalization. A lot of data on the slide. Let's try to make some picture out of this data. India has about 63 million enterprises, which is 3 times the number of enterprises in the US, although US economy is 8 times our size. So what's the trick? The trick is, out of this, just over 0.5 million have employee provident fund registration, and over 10 million, about 12 odd million, have GST registration. But these two account for 80% of the turnover of the companies. So why formalization is important is for 3 reasons. Number one, to improve the productivity. Today, only 14% of our manufacturing firms are over 100 employees, but they account for 77% of the formal employment in manufacturing and 88% of the value addition. There was a McKinsey study done, I think, about a year ago, which said that India has about 600 firms over $500 billion in turnover, and they account for over 40% of India's exports, right? So that is a huge, and their productivity is about 11 times that of economy, right? So similarly, what we need to do is, in the past, our companies have been small and remain small, but that needs to change. What we want to create is not dwarfs, but babies, companies which grow up, because they have a positive impact on the productivity. Second factor is tax to GDP. You look at our tax to GDP ratio at about 17 odd percent. It's much lower than the OECD countries at 35%, but even compared to Brazil, China, much lower. And third is on the debtor discipline. Enforcement of contract, we have this insolvency and bankruptcy code where we have recovered $25 billion. So with that, I move to the third letter, which is infrastructure. I know one of our speakers will talk about this in more detail, but what I wanted to leave a message on the infrastructure is, this has been a pain point for a lot of foreign investors earlier. If we have to achieve our vision of being a 5 trillion economy, a 10 trillion economy by 2030, we are looking to double our annual spend on infrastructure. We currently spend about $150 billion. We need to double it to $300 billion. And about 70% till 2019 of that has come from the government, which always happens world over. It's similar. So you look at any sector of infrastructure. You look at highways. 30% of our highways, over 1/3, has been built in the last 6 to 7 years. So between 2019 to 2022, we would build 60,000 kilometers of highways. Railways, till about 2 years ago, we had only 40% of our railways electrified. Now by 2030, we want 100% of our railways electrified. On power, we want to reduce our the transmission and distribution losses from 19% to 10%. Why we want to do that? Because we want to reduce the cost of power to improve our manufacturing competitiveness. So infrastructure, and finally, the D of my acronym CFID is digitization. This is a winner in India. We have, and what is driving this digitization is the number of internet users, estimated at about 700 million, low cost of data. Our data consumption in the last 5 years has increased by 60x. And what is happening there is, this is leading to inclusion in the consuming class. I would just highlight a few factors. One is we have this India stack, which is presence-less, paperless, as well as consent-less. In simplistic term, what we are looking at is 1 billion people, billion mobile, billion biometrics. And we have one of the most advanced which is known as Unified Payment Interface. Just look at the volume growth. In April, we had about 2.6 billion transactions on this. In fact, this system is geared towards having 1 billion daily transaction. And this has far overtaken the usage of credit cards. Usage of credit cards is still, after 70 years, there's some 60 million credit cards, right? So you have smartphone, you have data connectivity, you have this unified payment interface. And as an aside, since we are talking about pandemic, we have the vaccination certificate on our app, which had some initial glitches, like any big system will have. But on a single day when it was open for vaccination to above 18, we had over 13 million registrations. And now, as soon as you get your vaccination shot on your mobile, on this app, within 24 hours, you get a vaccination certificate. So why I'm saying all this is, we have not taken an incremental leap, we have taken a quantum leap. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I come to the end of my presentation and I leave with the message: CFID for India opportunity, consumption, formalization, infrastructure, digitization. Thank you, Mr. Deepak. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for your wonderful presentation. Moving on to our next speaker, may I now invite Ms. Nilashi Shukla. She is a senior investment specialist in Invest India. Ms. Shukla.
Thank you so much, Deepak, and welcome everybody. Good evening from India. Good afternoon to everybody who's joining us from the overseas. I'm Nilashi and I represent the Swiss desk at Invest India, where we single-handedly handhold companies from the Swiss region who are either looking to enter India or are already in India, looking to expand their presence, or even facing some operational challenges, raising some policy issues, etc. So we are the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation arm of the Government of India, and we're here to handhold help all Swiss companies who are looking to come to India. Now, as I think Tarun very nicely captured the economic scenario and the India opportunity quite a bit. So I will not, in the interest of time, I'll just briefly touch upon some key stats that could maybe, help convince you. And if you're already convinced, then, maybe accelerate your plans towards, coming to India and choosing India as a preferred economic and investment destination for you. So as Tarun also mentioned, that India, of course, is a huge consumer base. We are an emerging economic powerhouse in the world. We are the fastest growing G20 economy. We are the third largest economy in PPP terms. As he mentioned, in terms of the digital adoption, we are the first in terms of global fintech adoption. Unified identities have been created. Financial literacy in a country as vast as ours has actually percolated down to the last mile level. Even rural areas, a lot of direct benefit transfers or direct subsidies from the government are now coming in the wallets, in the mobile phones, in the digital wallets of people who are located in far off areas, owning farmlands in India. Again, that into how we are the second largest internet user base in the world. And one thing that India has really picked up in the last few is to emerge as a very, very vibrant startup ecosystem. In fact, it is quite interesting that last month itself, in a span of 4 days, we had 6 unicorns registering in India, and these were across healthcare, across social commerce, across fintech, and that is just a growth story that's waiting to happen and expand as we go forward. Of course, as I had already mentioned, that our growth is accelerating despite flattening of the global scenario. Even though it took us 63 years to add $1 trillion to our economy, we have only exponentially increased and added to that. In fact, in the last 3 years, we have added another $1 trillion to our economy to reach a $3 trillion status, and it is estimated that by 2030 we'll be one of the top 3 in terms of global growth, nominal GDP terms. Again, as was already touched upon, we are a huge consumer base. We are the second largest smartphone market in the world. We are the fastest growing e-commerce market, which is growing at a speed of 30% CAGR. In fact, about to reach $200 billion in the few years to come. We are the second largest two-wheeler. We are the largest two-wheeler market. We have a huge passenger ecosystem, and we are supposed to even double our durable growth in the next, in the next 2 years, in fact. Uh, of course, all of this has not been just concentrated in the tier one cities or restricted to the well-off, so to speak, communities. This has been a largely widespread growth story, which has been really steered by our tier two, tier three cities. Some of the key, very interesting facts are in fact captured on this slide. That the smallest cities, in fact, capture 50% of the Mercedes-Benz sales in our country. 60% of Amazon sales are in fact coming from these, hinterlands and rural areas of our country. And as I'd already mentioned, in terms of the digital adoption, about 50% of the digital wallet user base is also concentrated across these regions. So, of course, the growth story of India is not a very, very skewed story, so to speak. It's going to be a very inclusive story spread across different regions. One of the factors that will, of course, be steering this ahead is that we have a very young working age population. In fact, it's estimated that in the next decade or so, we'll be adding about 114 million people to our working age population, while the United States would only be adding 3 million. So you can see how vast that difference is and how much of a potential there is to grow in this particular segment. Of course, the young population would have a median age of 28 years only, would obviously comprise of about 20% of the global working population, will also be the second highest English-speaking population in the entire world, thus, of course, helping investments and investors across the world to better integrate with the Indian systems, and of course for India to also become a larger part of the global supply chain and ecosystem. Of course, another very important aspect why this becomes important is that now India is a preferred location for AI, digital, and R&D operations. In fact, during the World Economic Forum Davos Summit, our focus, our Prime Minister's focus was towards emphasizing how the future of work will transform for India, given the given the schemes, given the policies, given the push that's coming in both from the private as well as the public sector in this space. Every year we have about 900,000 plus science and engineering graduates, a figure that's only going to go exponentially up as, of course, our demographic dividend shifts more to our favor. Healthcare, again, one of the topics that we are also going to be discussing today in greater depth, is a very good example of how this has actually translated in companies actually stationing their AI-based platforms here, their R&D and innovation centers here. In fact, even companies like Google have, of course, paid a very, very large emphasis on using India as a big R&D and innovation hub going forward as well. Again, as I had already mentioned, India has the second largest startup ecosystem in the world. The number of unicorns that we have increased by about 24 times in the last 7 years. We have about 50,000 odd startups in the who have raised up to 63 billion US dollars of funds. In fact, recently, 2 days ago, the Securities Exchange Board of India came up with a new regulation which allows alternate investment funds to invest up to $1.5 billion even overseas in helping startup growth. A lot of other policies in terms of relaxing CSR spending for corporates to actually help foster growth in startups have also been put forth. And of course, we have a very flagship initiative of the government of India, which is actually housed in Invest India itself, which is the Startup India Initiative, which is a nationwide, game changer of sorts, which has its own corpus, but also engages with startups across different regions of the country, across the value chain, across sectors, and helps and handhold them, partners with them on various aspects, whether it is helping them in terms of their R&D, helping them, have some innovation challenges to find the next best technology. So all of that, of course, is also happening as we speak. Another aspect that I would like to briefly touch on is how we have been very, very committed to sustainable growth. India has been a pioneer in terms of leading these initiatives, even at a global scale. We co-founded the International Solar Alliance along with France at the Paris Summit. Where we have now expanded, the membership of that alliance to also include non-tropical regions, and most recently, Italy has been a signatory to that as well. Similarly, we've also, we've more than met our INDC targets that we had again put in the Paris Climate Agreement. We've put very aggressive targets and very ambitious targets in terms of solar and wind energy for us. We have the 5th largest capacity on this front as well. All this has also been complemented with all the efforts that we have taken in terms of digitization and accelerating digital growth. We have helped, form universal healthcare identities. We are trying to ensure that electricity is there for all. We have a housing for all initiative, which is one of the largest affordable housing initiatives in the world. All of that, of course, has made us a preferred destination for global investors, as Tarun also mentioned. That according to UNCTAD, while the global FDI was falling last year, in India it in fact rose by 13%, and you can see how comparing with other emerging economies, this has only accelerated. In fact, India has attracted the largest FDI ever last year, which was over $81 billion, which is over 10% of what it did even the year before that. And all this is, of course, despite the pandemic. We have also made great strides when it comes to improving our rankings on some of the global metrics, like the ease of doing business ranking by World Bank, the Global Innovation Index, the Logistics Performance Index. All of this, of course, has been backed by a very strong three-pronged agenda, which is aimed towards reducing the cost of doing business, improving the ease of doing business, and minimizing the risk of doing business. In terms of that, I will just, you can just go through this slide. We can circulate it later. I would not go into details of, what these schemes are. But of course, I would just like to touch upon how we have, of course, helped, achieve significant advantage across key manufacturing inputs. We have also come up with a flagship production-linked incentive scheme, which boosts domestic production, where an outlay of about $26 billion has been set to increase, production by over 20 times in the 5 years to come, which is also across sectors. Labor reforms and skill development have also been at the forefront of where the government would like to be. All of that, of course, has been complemented again with a robust infrastructure for greater operational efficiency. And we also have one of the largest and strongest railroad networks across the world, also strengthening that. Again, for infrastructure, I think Tarun has already mentioned that we are spending really big across roadways, across port modernization, across dedicated freight corridors, and regional aviation connectivity across the landscape of the country. And all of this is estimated to reduce our logistics cost by 5 to 6%, increase average speed of our road networks, as well as increase our port handling capacity by over 100%. Just briefly coming to the biotech sector, which of course people, after me would highlight more in terms of the depth. India is a leading supplier of DBT, BCG, and measles vaccines globally. We are the largest pharmaceuticals and biotechnology talent pool, highest FDA-approved plants, also second highest FDA-approved plants also across the world. All of this is, of course, stated to make our biotech industry grow up to $150 billion in the next 4 years, so to speak. We have ready infrastructure helping complement us. We have about 4,000 biotech startups, which are stated to go up to 10,000 in the years to come. And we have dedicated companies from across the world who have housed themselves in India. Again, this is also complemented by a lot of policy support that's there from the central government as well as the state governments. All of those policies, including 100% FDI, which is allowed under the automatic route for greenfield projects, products, projects. At the same time, all of the thrust is more towards pushing for innovation, R&D incentives, and also going through a very, very public-private partnership-led approach when it comes to all of the policy landscape. So if you'll see under the National Biopharma Mission or BIRAC or the other drugs and clinical trial rules that have been instituted, they've all been done to make it a more industry friendly, a more outward looking, a more optimistic industry in the years to come, given how critical this particular sector has of course proved in this particular challenging time. I would just like to conclude by saying that, of course, Invest India is a dedicated national investment promotion and facilitation arm of the government. And so far, we have handled over 260,000 business requests from over 162 nations and 40 sectors. And we'd be more than happy to help and handhold any companies who are looking to come to India.
Thank you, Nilashi, for sharing your insights on investing in India. Thank you. Now I request Mr. Jayesh Ranjan sir, Principal Secretary of the Industries and Commerce Department in Government of Telangana, to share his views on the overview of the industrial policies in Telangana. Sir.
Thank you very much. Greetings to fellow panelists. Greetings to all the attendees. I'm very happy that we are laying emphasis on what happens in a state also. While you heard the national perspectives from the previous speakers, you must also remember that India is a federal country and there are 28 states which are part of this federal setup. I represent the state of Telangana, which is roughly in the middle of the country. And our capital city is very well known. It is called Hyderabad. So I would like to explain to you the way previous speakers spoke about the investment opportunities in India. I would like to explain to you what are the policies and the investment activities that we take up, the investment promotion activities that we take up at a state level. And this will give you a fairly good understanding on how, when you look at India as a totality, how should you select the state where your investment should be located. So can we move on? Can we have the next slide, please? Yes. So as you can see on this map of the country, these are the 28 states, and Telangana is roughly in the center of the country. Many of you will not be familiar with the name Telangana because this is a new state which came into being only in 2014. But our capital city of Hyderabad is quite well known. And this is a premier metropolitan city, a very important technology hub, and a very important hub for life sciences as well, as we will be explaining to you later in this webinar. We are also a state which has shown very impressive performance on multiple socio-economic parameters. Though it is a state which was formed only 7 years ago, we have shown the highest growth rate in the country, and on various other parameters also, our performance is way, way above the national average. Next one, please. So here is a list of some of those parameters. So for example, our average GSDP growth between the last 5 years is 14.2%, which is much more than the national average. We have 63 special economic zones. So lots of international companies, global companies actually prefer to locate themselves in these special economic zones because it helps them to export easily and also import raw materials easily. So we have the largest number of SEZs in the entire country. We also have close to 15 million acres of industrial land, which again is the highest in the country. And in the last 5 years, we have attracted over $20 billion worth of investments. And I again feel very happy to share with you that a significant percentage of that, 24%, is repeat investments, which means that a company which invested once in Telangana found the going to be good enough to repeat it the second time, the third time, and so on and so forth. And we are also a very sustainable and a green and clean state, because we deploy a large extent of solar energy for our industrial purposes, domestic purposes. The production of more than 3,500 megawatt of solar energy makes it the second highest in the country. Next one, please. And the reason why Telangana has today become one of the go-to destinations for global investors, domestic investors, is because we have best-in-class policies. In fact, we have, as my colleagues spoke to you a while ago, the national government, led by our Prime Minister, started a campaign which is called Make in India. This campaign started in 2014, and the Prime Minister encouraged the states to carry out reforms, because if Make in India has to become a reality, the states must also carry out lots of reforms. And I feel very proud to share with you that the state which carried out the largest number of reforms and the most far-reaching, most progressive reforms is the state of Telangana, my state. In fact, the reforms have been so useful and so impactful that for the past so many years, we are rated as one of the best states in the country on ease of doing business. So I spoke to you about the infrastructure that is available, the 15 million acres of industrial land that is available. I mentioned to you about the clean energy, sustainable infrastructure, and we also provide very attractive package of incentives to overseas investors. In fact, we have this policy which is called meet or beat policy. So if a global investor tells us that I have already received a assured package of incentives in this country or some other state in India, then I can straight away agree to it using our flexibility of the meet or beat policy. There will be no discussions, there will be no negotiations. I'll just look at what you have been offered elsewhere and I'll just say yes to it, I'll sign up for it. And so these are some of the factors which make Telangana a very attractive destination. Next one, please. And this policy is called TSI Pass. So as I mentioned, the reforms that we have carried out is that in India, once you settle on the land where you are going to set up your facility, you require various kinds of approvals and permissions to start your construction. In Telangana, the reform that we have brought is that you do not require any approval or permission to start the construction of your factory. You can start without any papers. And when you have completed your factory building, when you are ready to start the commercial production, at that stage, you require approvals and permissions, which will be guaranteed to you in 15 days flat. And let us say you apply for these approvals and permissions on the 1st of June. And by 15th June, if you do not get these approvals, then you can start your production on 16th June and no questions will be asked. And as you can see on this chart, in the last 6 years or so, close to 15,500 such approvals and permissions have been given by us in 15 days time, and 80% of them have started commercial production. This is something which by average Indian standards is extremely high. In fact, it is mind-bogglingly high that you have achieved 80% conversion. Next one, please. And this is some of the very positive press that we have received. For example, this big headline proclaims that Telangana has become the go-to place for industries, and smaller news items talk about different companies from different sectors. So for instance, Intel has chosen to set up their technology center. Then there is a medical devices company which has chosen to create the Asia's biggest stent unit in Telangana. A semiconductor company called Qualcomm has again decided to set up their largest campus outside their own headquarters in the US. Their largest is obviously in San Diego in the US, but the second largest campus anywhere in the world, they have decided to locate that in Hyderabad. And there are many such examples. I mean, these are just a few random picks from the newspaper, but there are literally hundreds of such accolades that we have received for the progressive industrial policy. Next one, please. And as I mentioned, Qualcomm, Intel, Stent, that company which manufactures Stent is called SRT, but SMT rather. But here you can see on this chart, every company which is a leader in their field. Novartis, you will be hearing their story in a while. They are from your country. They have, again, the biggest presence outside your headquarters in Basel, here in Hyderabad. Lots of, you can see lots of IT companies. In fact, the who's who of the IT world, like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, and some of these hardware companies like Oracle. We also have lots of life sciences companies, Johnson and Johnson, Sanofi, which is a French major, and Indian, the important Indian companies here. You see Boeing and Lockheed Martin and GE, they are the leaders in aerospace. IKEA, you will be again amazed to know that when IKEA, first of all, IKEA was not entering India for many, many decades. It was very skeptical about India. But when they finally chose to enter India, they selected Hyderabad as the site for their first Indian store. And that Indian store is up and running for the last 3 years. And they are extremely happy with the way that store's journey has unfolded. And looking at the success of the first IKEA store in Hyderabad, now they have decided to open at least a dozen more stores, and 2 more have come up after Hyderabad. So there are many more such examples to show how Hyderabad today has the ability to attract the best and the brightest of the world. Next one, please. So this is a very broad overview of the industrial policy and the performance that has happened here in the last 6 years. And you will now hear a little bit more about what is it that we offer for the life sciences industry. And thereafter, we will hear a actual testimony from a global client who, of course, is very well familiar to you on what they have gained after coming to Hyderabad. So thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, sir. I think after your presentation, all the Swiss companies, they must have come to know that why they should invest in Telangana. You have given a very good overview of the various features of industrial policy in Telangana. Thank you, sir. With this, I will invite Mr. Shakti M. Nagappan, who is a director in Life Sciences and Pharma and the Chief Executive Officer of Hyderabad Pharma City. He will be sharing his views on the recent initiatives in the life sciences and the biotech sectors in the state of Telangana. Dr. Nagappan, please. Nagappan, I think you are on mute. Mr. Nagappan, we are not able to hear you. I think we are facing some technical issues with the Mr. Nagappan is not able to present his presentation. So in the meantime, let me invite the Swiss company Novartis. This very famous Swiss company Novartis, they have their India headquarter in Telangana. So I request Mr. Arno Thelman to please come on the stage and share your views about your experience in working with the state of Telangana, India. Mr. Thelman, please.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks to all of you for being here today and for having me with you. I'm Arno Tellmann, head of global drug development for Novartis in India. And as you may sense, I'm neither Indian nor Swiss. I'm German. I'm a German citizen. Joined Novartis in Basel back in 2004. But very relevant for today, I have spent around 5 years in Hyderabad. And always being part of the Novartis journey in Telangana state and in Hyderabad. So I joined first time there back in 2007 and have seen a lot of very, very positive developments over the last year. So happy to share that. Let's first recap for a few seconds on Novartis. I think all of you know who we are and what we do. We are an innovative medicine company headquartered in Switzerland and in Basel. And of course, we have a very strong global presence around the world. And that obviously includes also India. And that's, of course, today's focus. And our vision is really to become the most valued and trusted medicine company in the world. But today, I would like to share with you our experience on the ground in India, mainly in Telangana, and how that is contributing to our global mission. Our key strategic priorities are obviously transform innovation and to deliver really new medicines. A very strong people and culture component to that. Operational excellence, something India is very, very strong at. A future area of interest, and I think you have heard a lot over the last 45 minutes, is on data and digital. Again, India is contributing a lot. And then needless to say, it is key for us and across industry to really build trust with society. India has been part of the Novartis journey since more than 70 years now. So we have a very strong presence in the country. Sandoz, Ciba-Geigy were there over decades. Our country headquarters is in Mumbai. But very important, of course, for today is our activities in Telangana state in Hyderabad. And that journey started back around 15 years now, back in 2007. We have built over the years a very strong and large presence in Hyderabad with more than 7,000 employees, colleagues on the ground. We have a huge business service organization now called Customer and Technology Solutions, mainly focusing on financial services, HR, IT, but also a lot of new innovation, data, digital capabilities are built there. And then the second large organization, the one I'm heading, is Global Drug Development. Again, serving global drug development activities for Novartis, big scale up over the last couple of years with now around 2,300 colleagues, and yeah, quite a large organization. So I'm part of that. And then, of course, there are a few other divisions, to say all Novartis divisions have a quite significant presence on the ground in Hyderabad. When we talk about Hyderabad, we have our large building you see on the right upper corner, Novartis Knowledge City. So since I joined, we moved offices 3 times because of our expansion progress. I can just confirm that the positive experience there. And then we've built our Genome Valley site, which is mainly laboratory facilities with, soon close to 500 associates as well. So overall, I can really say we are providing significant and increasing amount of services of contribution to our global Novartis mission end-to-end from Hyderabad, embedded in a very strong ecosystem. And you have heard a lot about that. And of course, the future focus areas are, for example, driving our data and digital journey and strategy from Hyderabad, and the ecosystem there certainly helps. What we have enhanced over the years is really to have stronger collaboration, not only with the local government, but also, of course, with external academia, with other companies, but also touching on the startup system, ecosystem that is really growing rapidly, and it's mind-blowing to see that. So overall, very successful story. As I said, I was part of it since 2007, lived there for 5 years. And within Novartis, I'm always kind of the ambassador when people feel like, oh, what about Hyderabad? There was quite a number of often not so right perceptions. So yeah, I have experienced it in a very positive way. So just wanted to share that with you. A few key learnings before hopefully Shakti comes back, or we can open for Q&A. From our perspective, it was the right decision back in 2006, 2007 to move to Hyderabad. We can really deliver quality, highly professional services and contributing to our global mission from there. There's a huge potential. We touched before on the education system, on the average age. We have really very good experience there, highly motivated, highly professional, well-educated, loyal team. Strong ecosystem when it comes to startups, especially in the area of life science. I talked about Genome Valley, really many companies, and increasing scope, which of course is also an opportunity for us for closer collaboration. And of course, there are many, many big players, external companies, partners of Novartis we also have access to. Infrastructure was a big topic of today. Is key for sure. And it's beyond IKEA, where it made my second stay in India much easier to get settled. But when I meant infrastructure, I'm from road infrastructure, the investments in Genome Valley, airport, transportation, really many, many very important aspects. What is very key more on the softer side is really having a close connect between, let's say, the Swiss or global organization and the India organization. That was key for our success. And needless to say, close collaboration with the local government, state government is key, and with all stakeholders on the ground. We touched briefly before on COVID. It is, of course, having impact, but I have to say we have really managed well, and we do manage well as we speak. So all of these aspects really help. So I promise to keep it short and crisp. So thank you all for being here. Happy to answer any question. And if needed, we can, of course, also get in touch offline after the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tellman. I am very sure that all the learnings which you have mentioned, they will be very beneficial for other Swiss participants who are in this webinar. They will gain so much from the learnings, from all the learnings and from the experience of Novartis in working in Telangana. With this, I will invite Mr. Nagapan. He is a director in the life sciences and the pharma sector and the chief executive officer in the Hyderabad Pharma City in the government of Telangana. He will be briefing us on the initiatives in the life sciences and the biotech sectors. Mr. Nagapan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bansal. Apologies for the technical issue, and glad to be here. Good evening, good afternoon to all the participants. I know we are behind schedule, so I'll keep it very, very brief, and then give you a glimpse of the life sciences sector in Telangana. So, as Mr. Ranjan and Arnav pointed out, there are significant capabilities of life sciences in the state of Telangana. And I'll kind of take you through a journey which will capture why we say that, right? So if you look at Telangana as a state, we have about 800 life sciences companies, pharmaceutical, biotech, and medical devices companies who are present, and the combined value of these 800 companies is in the tune of about $50 billion. And we as a state contribute about 40% of the national pharma production. The presenter from Invest India also mentioned that India has the largest number of FDA approved facilities outside the United States. And Telangana has a unique distinction here. We are the only state or the province in the world which has more than 200 FDA approved sites. Not even a province or a state in US has this distinction. We are followed by New Jersey, which has 189 approved facilities. So that's how significant Hyderabad's pharmaceutical ecosystem is for the country and for the world. And we produce 1/3 of the global vaccine output. So 1 in 3 vaccines produced globally are from the city of Hyderabad and from the state of Telangana. So again, in terms of vaccine as well, Telangana has a very, very significant feat. We have the first R&D cluster, which was established in early 2000, which is now one of the most successful life sciences clusters in India and also the Asia Pacific region, called Genome Valley, which Arnav touched upon in his presentation as well, where Novartis has a base. And in fact, we are really proud that we have a range of Switzerland companies who are present in Genome Valley. We have Novartis, we have Lonza, we have Ferring Pharmaceuticals, and a number of others. So in fact, we were at one point contemplating naming a street as European Corridor, given the amount of European companies who are present in Genome Valley. So there are about 100 companies from about 120 countries who are present in the cluster. And Hyderabad also has a range of national and international educational and research institution, which contributes to the research capabilities in the city and the state, and also in terms of producing manpower that are required for this sector. And as I mentioned, we are a $50 billion ecosystem. The ambition of the state government is to double it and then make it a $100 billion ecosystem in a period of about 10 years. And by creating 400,000 new jobs. So that's the vision that we have set for ourselves. And, we are, progressing in that path. If you look at, in the last 4 to 5 years, we have actually attracted more than 700 investment proposals. 700 new units have been new projects and sites have been set up in Telangana by both existing companies and also new companies. So if you kind of look at what we are doing to achieve this $100 billion vision, we are taking a very strategic approach in terms of building on what already exists in the city and the state, and also doing newer initiatives which will help us achieve this vision. So Genome Valley is the country's first and the largest R&D cluster, which I mentioned. So we are kind of strengthening that. There are already about 200 companies which are present there, but we are trying to strengthen that and consolidate the cluster further. And the second is we launched a medical devices park about 3 years ago. The park is coming up well, so we are focused on kind of building on the start that we've had, and then getting new more companies from around the world come and set up a base here. And the third initiative is Hyderabad Pharma City, which is one of the most ambitious initiatives to build the world's largest pharma ecosystem in a 19,000 acre size. So this will be the world's largest cluster. There's no other cluster, even a mixed cluster, that exists of this size for pharmaceutical industry. And then, of course, as Mr. Jayesh Ranjan pointed out, Hyderabad is known for its IT capability and also life sciences capability. So we're really excited about the intersection that these two sectors are presenting. So we are also kind of trying to, strengthen this area in terms of tech and analytics as well. So I'll briefly run you through each of these initiatives, and then, probably pause there, and then we can take any specific questions that you have during the Q&A session. So Genome Valley, as I mentioned, is the largest, R&D cluster. It has who's who, like Novartis, we have GSK, we have, Lonza, we have Nectar Pharmaceuticals, a range of companies who are doing R&D and development activities there. And this cluster is also home to a large number of vaccine manufacturers. So 4 out of 5 large Indian vaccine manufacturers who are approved by WHO, pre-qualified by WHO, are present in this cluster. And the cluster has been ranked number 1 in the life sciences hotspot. So KPMG and a company called Celestra ranked all the life sciences hotspots in the country. And the Genome Valley has been ranked number 1, and it has consistently been ranked number 1 in many such reports done by different agencies. So it's just a glimpse of kind of activities that say, so right from agri research companies, incubations. There are 3 incubation centers in this cluster. There are a number of global players. There are Indian multinationals who are there, vaccine manufacturing, etc. So Hyderabad Pharma City, the initiative that I mentioned is a ambitious and a flagship initiative of this government, is to set up a very large and an integrated ecosystem, which will be a smart ecosystem for pharmaceutical industry. The cluster has already been approved as a national investment and manufacturing zone by Government of India, just to this goes to show the amount of importance the cluster has, both in terms of the country and also the world. And if you look at this, it's a fully integrated cluster. So what we're trying to do is, in addition to the basic infrastructure that any industrial cluster provides, we are also getting into detail of very, very specialized infrastructure that the life sciences industry need, right? From heating systems to cooling system, effluent treatment plants, solid disposal system, logistics, warehouse. So the idea here is that every non-core activity that the pharma industry requires will be given to them on a platter. So the industry can concentrate only on the core activity, which is their manufacturing or R&D, and then leave the rest to the park. So everything is taken care at the park level. No clearances required. You don't have to run around multiple offices to see clearances. So everything is already obtained for this cluster. So based on our interaction, we believe this cluster can save anywhere in the range of 24 months to 36 months for a pharma industry to set up shop. So that's the kind of advantage in terms of time to market, and also cost-wise, there is a significant saving of anywhere in the range of 25 to 30%, both in terms of capex and opex for a tenant industry here. So both in terms of time to market and also cost, there is significant benefit that we have planned and integrated as part of the pharmaceutical design. This is probably the first cluster in India and this region which will have all these common utilities, and this is all green fuel source. So this is a commitment to the environment that we are using only cleaner fuel as against the conventional fuel. So we believe that this could kind of change the overall landscape for the pharmaceutical cluster in Hyderabad, in India, and also the world. And the medical devices park, I mentioned that we've launched this 3 years ago. There are almost about 40 companies who are setting up units there. Mr. Ranjan pointed out that Sajanand Medical Technologies, abbreviated as SMT, is setting up their Asia's largest stent manufacturing facility. Will be producing about 1 million stents and 1.25 million balloon catheters from Hyderabad. And the range of activities are being conducted in the park, which also has significantly contributed to the fight against COVID, right? From the test kits to PPEs to gloves, and a number of these products have been manufactured from the MedTech Park, and then supplied not just within the country but around the world as well. Recently, the world's largest medtech company, Medtronic, announced an investment of about $170 million to set up their largest R&D center outside of their headquarters in Minneapolis. So this is again a significant achievement that for the medtech efforts by the state, and this goes to show the amount of confidence that the global medical devices companies are showing in terms of the policies and the infrastructure and talent pool that's available in Hyderabad. And lastly, I mentioned that we're pretty excited and bullish about the opportunity presented by the intersection of IT and life sciences. And Hyderabad already has about 45% of the total workforce in life sciences global innovation centers. Novartis is a prime example, who has a significantly large base in Hyderabad. Similarly, there are other companies like Medtronic, Ferring, Mylan, Nectar, etc., who has a significant footprint in Hyderabad, doing their global work. So we are really excited about opportunities that the COVID pandemic has presented, and a number of global companies have been reaching out to us to explore possibilities. So we will be very keen to interact with all of you who are interested in trade and also investment to facilitate that. I'll leave you with one last point. Is there, as I mentioned, there are about 800 companies, and a number of startup companies were there in Hyderabad who are looking for potential technology partners, potential JV partners, etc. Similarly, a number of such requests have also come from different regions in the world. So if there are requests around it, we'll be very happy to facilitate. If you're looking at investment, we'll be very happy to kind of take you through the whole process. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Bansal.
Thank you, Mr. Nagappan, for sharing your views and the recent initiatives in the life sciences sector in Telangana. Now coming on to the question and answer session. During the webinar, we have received many, in fact, around 10 questions on the life sciences and the biotech sector. So I'll be I'll be asking my experts and the speakers to answer them one by one. I'll take the first question. Can you please elaborate on the Novartis Biome Innovation Hub in Hyderabad? Mr. Telman, if you could please elaborate on this.
More than happy to share that. I mean, first of all, Biome is a Novartis global initiative. It started a few years ago in San Francisco. We have a few others in Paris, Singapore, and so on. But important, of course, for this forum, we have opened Biome India in Hyderabad more than a year ago, February last year, when our CEO Vas Narasimhan was there on the ground. And the aim is really to connect with the startup ecosystem, because I mean we have many problems that need to be solved, and we need innovative startup organizations that can really help us on that journey, on that mission. So very successful kickoff with many connections, but also beyond that, we have really concrete projects. We have proof of concepts. We have very close connects built with the mainly Hyderabad, but also beyond Hyderabad, India startup community. And so far, really a full end-to-end success story. And yeah, of course, building on it from Novartis' internal perspective, we also try to cover all different divisions. So it's really a very holistic approach from Novartis side, and yeah, a lot of support on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. One of the Swiss companies asking about the startup scene in Telangana, specifically on the incubator and the accelerator ecosystem. Mr. Jayesh Ranjan sir, if you could please elaborate on this.
Yeah, sure, Deepak. So Hyderabad has a very vibrant startup culture, and in fact, one of the oldest innovation ecosystem in the country for life sciences also exists in Genome Valley. It is called the IKP. So, and today there are more than a dozen incubators and accelerators who actually support startups. So the startup scene is very vibrant. The government also has various mechanisms to help them reach out to R&D institutions, reach out to pharma and biotech corporates, also connect with academic institutions, connect with funding agencies, VCs, and many startups in the last 3-4 years in particular have come out with products and solutions that are extremely useful for people at large. So my estimate is that of the approximately 2,000 plus startups of Hyderabad, roughly around 500 plus are focused on life sciences. And there are 8 incubators and accelerators who are all focused again on different aspects of life sciences. And they also collaborate and synergize their activities. So any corporate who wants to be a part of Hyderabad's innovation ecosystem, there is a very seamless and easy way of plugging into that.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, another participant who is asking us, what are the measures being taken by the government of India to become a front runner in the global supply chain after COVID-19, post COVID-19? Mr. Tarun, if I may request you to answer this question.
And this is a very opportune question because we are seeing a global rejig of the supply chain over the last 12 to 14 months. And supply chain rejig does not happen overnight. I think a couple of factors are there. One is reducing dependency on any particular country. B, in terms of evaluating other destinations which can have the necessary scale for that level of manufacturing. In India, number one, to attract such manufacturing, we've already reduced our corporate tax rate. So if you open manufacturing before 31st March 2023, there is a window out wherein your effective taxation is about 17 odd percent as compared to 25 odd percent. So that's number one. Number two, which the Invest India team also mentioned, is our production linked incentive. Now that's a game changer. The production linked incentives, what Nilashi also referred to, is something which gives you an incentives ranging typically from 4 to 6% of your sales as additional benefit. And this is on a certain benchmark of 5 years. So what we are talking is corporate taxation rate. We are talking on production linked incentives. We already spoke about reducing the cost of logistics, reducing the cost of power. We also have a lot of ready sites now, right? Industrial parks ready. Telangana gave a very, very good example. And I have personally traveled to a lot of these locations in Telangana. In fact, to complement the Telangana team, the fastest I've ever been from airport to Genome Valley, if I remember my memory correctly, it's about 83 odd kilometers. That's the fastest stretch of road, the best stretch of road. So clearly, and there are these ready locations available. So all put together, what as a country we are doing is improving our manufacturing competitiveness.
Thank you, Tarun. Moving on to the next question. One of the Swiss company asked, considering Telangana contributes to the 1/3 of the global vaccine production, can you elaborate on the cold supply chain situation in Telangana, which is a very important parameter in pharma and biotech logistics? Mr. Nagapan, if you would like to answer that question.
As you rightly said, we produce about 1/3 of the global vaccine, and cold chain is a very important aspect. The vaccine companies here in Telangana export vaccines to about 150 countries. So the vaccine, the cold chain per se is well established. And also about 50% of the material, the pharmaceutical production that are produced here are also exported significantly to a number of countries. There are a number of cold chain operators like TCI Cold Chain, Snowman, DHL, Agility, etc., who have a base in Telangana, aggregating volumes and then shipping into different regions. And also, one more point that I want to mention here is Hyderabad Airport has a specialized pharma cold chain handling facility, which is unique in the country. And this is also approved by WHO. The capacity is actually being doubled since last year after the COVID pandemic has come in. So while the cold chain facility is currently primarily catered to a range of about -20 to -25 degrees Celsius, with the number of mRNA vaccines and newer products that are coming in which require much lower temperatures, we are now looking at strengthening this ecosystem further.
Thank you, Mr. Nagapan. We have several questions more, but due to paucity of time, we have to skip those questions. So with this, we come to the end of this webinar. Before ending, I would like to thank all the participants and all the presenters who had made this webinar very successful. With the participants, I request them that for any kind of facilitation, they may be in touch with the Embassy of India, Berne, for any kind of facilitation. We will make sure that we'll connect you with Invest Telangana team, Invest India team. Thank you.